Sehr geehrter lieber Herr Feller,
Mr. Feller, Mrs. Orla, Mr. Titov, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased that you've come to Berlin, and I hope that you have had stimulating, exciting and discussions that will bring this issue forward during these last 2 days. I believe the challenges for peacekeeping in the world, and I think we all agree on that, are enormous, and they are also very, very diverse. And if we want to cope with these challenges, it is necessary that, first of all, we go beyond short-term objectives and that we start long-term planning. And that, secondly, we jointly want to be successful. And thirdly, and that is sometimes lacking, that we have enough patience. This holds true both for the United Nations and also for the member countries. Sometimes things don't happen as quickly as we've wished them to take place, but patience is necessary to be successful. I've heard from my staff members that you have had interesting and important discussions here with very concrete results. Mrs. Orla and Mr. Titov, concrete results that you will be able to take home with you to New York. I believe that this meeting was so important, if I may say so, because with this conference here, the civil branch of the United Nations will be strengthened, that it will obtain more muscle, so to say. That is also very important because the civil branch is as important as the military branch when it comes to peacekeeping, and therefore I believe that this is a very important conference and this is a very important task that you are performing here together. That is the reason why the federal government is attributing enormous importance to this topic on the whole. We are looking forward with anticipation to the analysis of what you have achieved here during this conference. And of course, we will also be prepared to spread the findings and the results of this conference here. The peacekeeping missions of the United Nations have to adjust to changing political framework commissions. The traditional observer missions that took place during the time of the Cold War were not sufficient 20 years ago. Now what is necessary today is the establishment of structure, the reconstruction of a country, the creation of rule of law institutions in these countries, and all this presupposes that our police officers have to be even better trained, that they are of a better quality, but that we will also have more police officers, so larger quantity. So there is an increasing demand for even higher qualified police officers, men and women. Ladies and gentlemen, this also means that we have to be very flexible with regard in face of the diversity of the challenges. With all the missions, we have specific challenges, we have very diverse conditions that we find on the ground when we start missions, different conditions for the implementation. It makes a difference whether we have a mission in Kosovo or Bosnia or in Sudan or Somalia. And we always have, it is necessary to adjust to those conditions flexibly, and it is necessary to learn this, to train this kind of flexibility and to have this flexibility available. And this is an aspect that will play a role at the so-called Challenges Forum that is going to take place here in Berlin. And I'm sure that the insights and the results of this conference yesterday and today will play a role at that workshop. And those talks will be about how the peacekeeping operations will have to look like in 2025. And I believe that the results of this conference will feed into that conference and will be important for that. If we want to be able to cope with peacekeeping in future, then we need cooperation. We need joint approaches that we first of all have to identify jointly, joint approaches with regard to the reconstruction of institutions in the area of security and law. We also have to achieve more harmonization concerning the activity of the different actors of the international community. And thirdly, we also have to we have to agree on how to shape future peacekeeping operations. Ladies and gentlemen, what is important is that we have to agree that police operations is not an exit strategy for the military. It is not the continuation of military peacekeeping, which just other means, but police peacekeeping is the beginning of the establishment of something else, of government structures, of security structures and institutions, and that has to be there. This insight has to be there right at the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, our resources are limited, just as anywhere in the world, and we have to make sure that we, with the help of efficiency, we achieve more with less. International peacekeeping always means that we have to give away something of our own resources. That means that our international demands compete with our national demands that we all have to meet in our own country. And as the Minister of the Interior also are confronted with this conflict, I have to justify towards my own people here in Germany why we need these police officers abroad that we would also need at home. It has to be made really clear to our people that external and internal security heavily depend on each other. And I think also media coverage makes this more and more clear. There is a direct link between the successful work of UN peace missions and the fight against transnational organized crime and terrorism. The more stable the conditions are in a country, the fewer the possibilities are there for criminals to become active, and the fewer possibilities international criminals have in order to establish structures that would pose a threat to all of us. The collapse of security and law in individual countries or in single countries, even if they are very far away, has an impact on everybody, everywhere in our global world. We all know that conflict and war give rise to organized criminal structures, and a bloody conflict often leads to corruption, and this then prevents the creation of an efficient police work and favors international criminal organizations. Transnational organized crime and terrorism flourish and thrive in conditions after a conflict. That is the best breeding ground for that, and that is why it is necessary to eradicate such conflicts at an early stage. Annual and multi-annual programs of the EU member countries account for that, namely that it is necessary to fight transnational organized crime in those areas from which it originates. That is something that at the European level has come to become a kind of common insight. Peacekeeping is always also a contribution towards fighting international organized crime, and it is makes a contribution towards internal security in each individual country. But it is also an expression of the fact that our international community is able to act. I think the reconstruction of structures and institutions and guaranteeing permanent peace is one of the core tasks of our United Nations system. I think all experience has shown that wherever we have succeeded in recreating reliable structures of law and security after a conflict, it is also possible to prevent new conflicts from arising. And where we have failed to create the necessary institutions of law and order, new conflicts will certainly are very likely to arise, and there's every prospect, every likelihood that this will end up in new military conflicts. And coping with the results of conflicts through reconciliation, therefore, lead long-term planning and long-term thinking. What is important is to include and involve the representatives of the countries concerned. They have to be part of the development of viable operational concepts for their country. The more people to the same line, the more sustainable and long-lasting the results will be. If we decide without involving the local stakeholders, we will be doomed to failure. And therefore, it is very decisive that in our international overall strategy, we also include the people of the host country, the local forces. This is something that within the European Union has prompted us to merge the instruments of civil crisis management of the European external policy and those instruments of the European internal security. The federal government promotes all efforts towards the creation of security institutions in order to destroy criminal structures. The question is whether we will actually be able to recruit a sufficient number of police officers, because the more police officers recruit, the more the fewer we will have in our own home countries. And here we need flexible and intelligent solutions, but gathering from what I heard from the last part of your discussion, I can say that you have embarked on a good path with a lot of creativity and imagination, and also the strategic guidance framework of the UNDPKO aims at recruiting and standardizing the recruitment of the necessary police forces in order to achieve harmonization and efficiency. I believe that is the right path. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure this will have a positive impact on the UN mission. Standardized guidelines or strategic guidance will improve the mission, and also the member countries will benefit from a managed and targeted human resources development and management. I can tell you that we will continue to support this process. We will also continue to make our own contributions, and I can tell you that there's a lot of appreciation by the United Nations for the strategic initiative of the German side. I want to be also proud of the fact that our police here in Germany, in particular in the field of training, has done a good job. And I would like to thank my German police officers for their committed and passionate work that they do for peacekeeping. More efficiency, more effectiveness can only be achieved through more cooperation, and therefore I believe that the establishment of a joint focal point of the UNDP and the DPKO is a right step towards creating more visibility, towards networking the stakeholders and so on. So I'm very much in favor of creating such a global focal point, a single contact point, so to say. And I think this is also an important outcome of this conference. We have to make sure that what you've achieved during this conference, and also how important it is to promote the creation of civil police structures, this has to be communicated, and we have to improve the communication of this, and have to make sure that the experience that exists on the part of the United Nations and also the experience that exists on the side of the European Union that this experience will be merged into just one situational image or picture, so to say. Well, I would like to thank you for your work, the work that you are doing, the work that you have done, that you've been doing over a long period of time. But I would also like to thank you for the work that you've done during the last 2 days here in Berlin. And after these intensive and exhausting sessions here, you will also have some more social part, a more social part of this meeting. My staff members are looking forward to inviting you to a trip on one of our pleasure boats, and I hope that after these intensive talks you will also be able to take some nice impressions home with you from our German capital. Mr. Titov, Ms. Orla, be assured of the German support for the continuation of your work. I think the conference here was quite a good input, and I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Anne-Marie, I'm getting formal again. Commissioner Orla, you have the floor.
Mr. Minister, distinguished representatives, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, fellow police officers. Our event has drawn to a close. For the past 2 days, we have discussed, sometimes debated about how we can make the UN police stronger. A common theme has cut across all interventions. UN police makes a direct difference in the lives of people in war-torn countries. UN police also makes a difference in more stable societies. It is our common overseas shield against global networks of drug traffickers, smugglers, money launderers, and other criminals who take advantage of fragile states for their criminal enterprise. To sum up, there is a consensus in this room that international police peacekeeping matters. We have made a convincing case for change. There is argument in this room that United Nations police must evolve. As we bear witness to unprecedented UNPOL expansion, we can no longer rely on approaches we inherited from the 1990s earlier years. We can no longer live in the 21st century of UN police peacekeeping and rely on 20th century's thinking. The police division has embarked on a major overhaul of our business model, tackling both doctrinal and capacity gaps. Our ambition is to turn United Nations police into a world-class center of excellence in policing. Ladies and gentlemen, this ambitious aspiration is not achievable unless the UN membership throws its support behind us. First, UN police needs political support. Police advisors in your permanent missions are our closest friends and advocates. I encourage more countries to have a police advisor in New York. I also hope that more permanent representatives will take a keen interest in policing matters and will raise their voice in our support. As a result of this conference, I hope code cables from your capitals will urge them to do so. Your support is vital for the development of the Global Police Guidance, the SGF, an initiative Andrew Carpenter, his policy team, and the entire police division are working on. This is a deeply professional, politics-free project. The goal is to create a common reference framework for police officers, to make UNPOL a cohesive and consistent service while benefiting from its natural diversity. I urge you to take advantage of the remaining regional rounds of consultations, to send your brightest police minds to take part and brainstorm with us. A police doctrine will help us define training needs. In the meantime, I cannot emphasize enough the need for quality pre-deployment training. It is the responsibility of member states. Solid pre-deployment training will allow your police personnel to positively contribute to the mission from day one in their assignment. Inadequate pre-deployment training and deficient equipment will prevent us from doing a good job. It will even put lives of police personnel in danger. Second, and I know this is hard for you to ask, particularly in these times of austerity, your governments to send your best qualified police staff, fluent in foreign languages, to remote corners of the world. What is in it for me, your minister or your police commissioner might wonder. It has become almost a truism that in our globalized world, national security of one country is linked to the rest of the world. Your police officers in UN field missions are at the forefront of our common struggle. Our common struggle to frustrate the efforts of terrorists and criminals to establish operational bases or transit hubs in weak or fragile states. While in the service of the UN, your police officers contribute to our common safety and security. They are also ambassadors for your police services. UN police is a wise investment with tangible returns. Do get in touch with our recruitment and selection chief, Atta Jenigan. He will be in Berlin in 2 weeks. Write directly to me and offer your specialist or teams of specialists to UNPOL. Each and every contribution is of great value to us. I also appeal to you to create career incentives in your countries for officers serving the UN. Again, they are not on holiday while with the UN. In fact, they fight for our common well-being in some of the most trying circumstances. Encourage your officers to serve in the UN. Make UN service a prerequisite for faster promotion. Your police officers will bring unrivaled operational experience back from an UNPOL operation. UN service will broaden their professional and personal horizons. Give us a good officer, and we will return a better one to you. Third, we need more female police officers. We need them not as poster models. Operational effectiveness of UNPOL requires adequate numbers of female police officers. Female police are indispensable in combating STBV crimes, but are equally good in public order, investigation, criminal analysis, or forensic specialists. We need to practice what we preach if we are to have more female police in the host state police. We have to act as role models, lead by example. Speaking of leading by example, we must eradicate instances of sexual exploitation and abuse by UN police officers. As the Secretary General stated, the UN has a zero-tolerance policy in such cases. Perpetrators of these crimes must be brought to justice. Let's make it to a zero-occurrence policy. Fourth, we need to reinforce our partnership within the UN family, with regional organizations, development agencies, and all those who work in the police field. Rebuilding or reforming a police service is a generational effort. Only partnerships from the very start of the mission will help us ensure the sustainability of what we do. We want to partner with all relevant actors from the very start of the mission. We want to make sure that our joint, I stress, joint efforts and programs become part and parcel of national deployments. I am delighted this meeting has already generated collaborating ideas. I certainly heard that Norway, maybe also with Sweden, are responding to Commissioner Woffy's request to send a specialized team in DRC. I have heard Fiji contemplating a similar idea. We need more of such practical cooperation. I urge you to consult with your capitals upon your return and give serious consideration to deploying specialized teams of your police. Ladies and gentlemen, Stefan and I have put together a summary of what we have discussed over the 2 busy days. It will be available at the back of the room. It is our perception of the outcome of this conference. I hope it becomes an action plan for all of us, member states, UN family, and regional partners. Let us take full advantage of the excellent German initiative. Let us roll up our sleeves and follow up what we have discussed. Let us start shaping the UN police of the 21st century. A police service every police officer would love to work for. A police service all of us can be proud of. A police service of all 193 member states. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to express a special thanks to our interpreters. Vielen Dank and alles gut.